G'day dudes. I'll start by saying if you're interested in this game, play it first, because I won't be holding back on any story information. The story centres around the mother, Li Feng, which was an accomplished actress before the birth of their daughter, and the father, Di Fang Yu, which accompanied his wife in the entertainment industry as a screenwriter. They only want what's best for their daughter, Mi Xin, and all they want is for her to have a healthy and prosperous upbringing. The game is set 1980 and onwards. Any obstacles to this prosperity is seen by the father as being curable by means within spirituality and heavily focused on superstition. Taking part over the course of 4 timelines, you're introduced to different pivotal moments in their lives within the same apartment building, with objects realistically being relocated to different locations over the years, such as the position of the refrigerator, table orientation, and general placement of the television and random household goods. A rift is slowly showing between the mother and father about how they're going to deal with their very young daughter's newfound worry. She's having health issues and they sound serious. Or so it would seem in the 1980s. The little girl's symptoms are this: tight chest and trouble breathing. Because the only perspective you have is of the father's, you only hear what he's heard. It doesn't sound good. So bad that it sounds like the child has a terminal illness, and the only thing they can do is use experimental treatment, and it sounds dangerous. Throughout the game, you're bombarded with the fact that your wife was an accomplished actress before she gave it up to look after her daughter and be a stay-at-home mother. One of the first things you see is a box of medals and pictures signed by the crew as you're moving into the empty apartment for the first time. Your daughter is said to follow in the same footsteps, appearing in talent shows and gaining popularity, but deep down she can't handle it. She goes to the doctor and is told that she has severe anxiety, and that being a mental illness, the parents refuse to believe the daughter could be crazy. And do various things to physically try to fix her, like acupuncture, praying, and visiting teacher Hue, that studies and practices Guanyin, the goddess of compassion.
喂，陆先生，我是何老师。你的情况我了解了，不用担心。你先来楼上见我。
The mother says if she gets better, she'll be able to play outside more often. If only they knew that not letting her do this would make it worse. The story of devotion is complicated. The wife was devoted to her career until the daughter's needs came along. The father was always devoted to his screenwriting, all the while ignoring the wants and needs of his daughter, until she developed a mental illness where in retrospect your character was able to witness the neglect firsthand. You're able to interact with the memory as if you're meant to intervene, but it's not clear what this represents. Perhaps your character plays a role as a harbourer for the goddess of compassion, and if only the father had listened to his daughter's expressing concerns over the knocking, something would have changed in the timeline, causing the eventual outcome to be different. But he was too consumed with his practices and he was getting the wrong information from his teacher Hue. You never know. Out of what the father seems is necessity, he quits his job to look after his daughter, leaving nobody working and bills piling up, because now they're devoted to fixing their daughter, rather than trying to understand her, since they don't believe what she has is psychological. Later in the story, the parents are now refusing to visit doctors, only visiting teacher Hue, which now seems like they've paid this teacher money and she's stringing them along. Maybe not on purpose, but it isn't what the daughter needed, and from the outside perspective, you can absolutely see this. The mother's becoming more skeptical and fed up with the living situations, with neither of them working and the father not being strict on the doctor's medications. They're running out of money, and constant visits to teacher Hue for a price in this time of need has made her see that they're being used. She's upset that it hasn't worked, and he's overly devoted to the teachings and he's blind to the manipulation. One of the first things you also find is transcripts of the father's screenwriting, and he's writing about what he knows. His moving inexperience has been transitioned into a script, with their daughter that's been turned into a boy on the way, perhaps because it's more noble to have a boy. Because as life gets tough, his writing declines, seemingly because what he's experiencing is taboo, and writing down any more information other than a vague illness would mean admitting his daughter had psychological issues which he just couldn't publicly speak about, or even personally entertain the notion. The father's undying devotion to fixing his daughter's psychological issues within the practices of Guanyin, and with teacher Hue, seem to be done out of spite in the later half of the game, as they fall into turmoil, with the wife seeking to live with her mother and the daughter staying with the father. allowing for one more ritual to take place. At the end of the game, you walk into a new, lonely, messy apartment. Your wife is split up with you and your daughter is seemingly grown or not living with you. You find a cassette with consultations on it, presumably from teacher Hugh. Beside the cassette was a note filled with ritual and superstitious connections. The tape had several other failed cases on it. One of a boy with average grades, one wanting another couple to divorce, and a man threatening to sue as he'd been paying her for a decade and she promised another 2 years with his father and rejected chemotherapy because of it, and he had died. Teacher Hugh in the notes has asked the father to cover his eyes with a red cloth, prepare a bottle of wine and place a spirit serpent inside, a container of his own blood, and then to pour the wine infused with the snake essence into your container of blood. This is seen to be soul for a soul in their eyes, and the last bastion to fixing their daughter's ailments. By this point, the wife had given up and wanted the daughter back at the doctor's, but the father refused. She puts her husband on blast on national television when the host asks what he thinks about all this.
今天邀请到的特别来宾是好久不见的玉女歌手巩俐芳小姐，听众朋友们一定都非常的开心，大家都非常的想念。你先生难道没有对这件事表达什么意见吗？
岂止有意见啊，根本大发雷霆。我想他最在乎的就是他那张薄薄的面子吧。
这么说会不会有一点太苛刻了？
苛刻。我努力让这个家还有家的样子，他呢，整天包红包给那个老师，花大钱去买那些怪东西，到处烧香，到处贴符，把家里弄得越来越邪门，还说我被不好的东西附身。
She's not going to be a stay-at-home mother anymore that doesn't look after her daughter to the best of her ability. And she's not going to let her husband shame her into not trying her best. Because while she doesn't have the support of her husband, and she's disconnected from everybody she ever knew, she has that letter from her friends in the entertainment industry saying that she will always be looked after. And that's enough reassurance for her to go back. In the end, the father in his own way sacrificed everything for his daughter's health, his career, his family, and devoted undyingly to the whims of a shaman. But by doing this, his devotion was misdirected from what was really important, which was his family as a unit and sorting the issues out together, asking what the daughter needs, not asking a shaman or a psychic what they could do, but trusting and listening to the little one. But you can't blame this story. It's set in the 1980s in Taiwan, where superstition was rampant, but the story does serve as an accurate depiction of the era. It took me just over 2 hours to finish, and while the end walking segment did drag, it was pretty good. So in essence, if this is what the gaming medium has to bring to the movie-length storytelling, then I'm happy to say I look forward to upcoming games that are made just as well. And with it being in VR, that's super cool. I'm looking forward to developers taking this on and bringing down the cost of VR with demand. I think that's just wishful thinking, but whatever. So thank you all for watching.